بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه. I'd like to welcome you all to the second lecture of week 6 of ICS 104. So, any questions before we proceed?
Doctor?
No.
Is the midterm announced?
I think so. I think ours has been announced to be on 16th, right? March 16th at 7 p.m.
March. 16th
Yes.
March.
Yes.
Yes.
Thanks.
Okay. Right. So let's then move on. We started with repetitions and loops day before yesterday. Let me see, where is my set of slides? This is it. Okay. Okay. So we basically went over, this example. This is the last thing that we did. This is the last thing that we did the other day, and we saw that when we are trying to track two variables at the same time, and they are inside a while loop, it's best, to draw kind of a table, and basically the last row in each column denotes, the latest value of that variable. Denotes the latest value of that variable. طيب. On the chat, what does the following loop print? What does the following loop print? يلا يا شباب, wake up. Okay, Muhammad says nothing. Anybody agrees with Muhammad? 0. Sufyan. So how did you get the 0, Sufyan? Can you explain to us?
I equal 0.
طيب.
We printed I.
No, let's start from here. So I equals 0, total equals 0, صح?
A.
Right. Now, while total is less than 0.
أيوه.
Right. So is this condition true?
لا.
It's not true. So what will happen?
معلش أنا ما شفت البرنت توتال. ما شفت البرنت توتال.
Well, even the print total, by the way, are we going to ever reach this statement?
No, because it's inside the block.
It is inside the body of the while loop. Since the condition is false, I'm going to skip all the body of the while loop, and I will start from here. Well, here there is nothing. So that's why the right answer here is basically nothing. Nothing is printed. Okay? Nothing is printed because the condition of the while loop when I first checked it was basically false. 0 is not less than 0. Huh? 0 is not less than 0.
And Doctor, will the printing be error?
Why it will print an error? Where does the error come from?
No, I mean because the system is not working, so it will be like. Isn't it?
What do you mean the system is not working?
I mean the condition.
Yeah, the condition. Well, do you remember the flow chart of the while loop?
Yes.
Yeah, the flow chart of the while loop. It says if the condition is false, you just skip the while loop. And this is what's happening. Who said that if you write a while loop that you should enter this while loop at least once? Nobody said that. It actually depends on the condition. If the condition is false from the beginning, you will never go inside the while loop.
Okay.
Okay, very good. Right. Okay. So we want to write loops that read and process a sequence of input values. Okay. Let's assume that we have a sequence of input values. We would like to read them and process them. Like, the question that comes is, when do we stop? I'm reading, but somehow I need to tell the program that, by the way, the value that I'm entering now either is the last value or the value that I have entered before now was actually the last one. Okay, because we have to somehow tell the program, please stop reading. Okay, please stop reading. So how do we do that? Well, we do that using what is called a sentinel value. Okay, we do that using a sentinel value. What is a sentinel value? Well, a sentinel value denotes the end of a data set. Okay, denotes the end of the data set. But that value is not part of the data. That value is not part of it. So basically, the sentinel value tells you that the last data point that you have read was actually the one previous to this one. The one previous to this one. So let's take an example. Let's look at a program that computes the average of a set of salary values. The average of a set of salary values. Now, we would like to have a sentinel value, a value that indicates that, by the way, I'm done. I was finished, previously. So please, stop, keep, reading. What we will do here is we are going to use any negative value as a sentinel value. Okay, we will use any negative value as the sentinel value. And does it make sense to use a negative value as a sentinel value?
لا.
It doesn't make sense.
Yes.
ليش لا? It doesn't make sense.
Because the
Dr.
salary wouldn't be negative.
Sentinel value.
Oh, okay. So a negative value, basically, maybe what you meant was that a salary that is negative does not make sense. صح؟
ايوه ايوه
A salary that is negative does not make sense. That's why it is, sensible, to use the negative value as a sentinel value in this case, right? So an employee would surely not work for a negative salary. So this is basically the program. This program prints the average of salary values that are terminated with a sentinel. So we first initialize the total and the number of salaries entered, the count. Okay, and we initialize the salary to 0. We initialize the salary to 0, and here we will say, while salary is greater than or equal to 0. Okay, while salary is greater than or equal to 0, what do you do? Well, you basically enter a salary or a negative value to finish, right? So you basically read the value into salary, and then if salary is greater than or equal to 0, you add that to the total and you add 1 to the count, because in the end, after you finish, you would like to find the average, which is basically the total divided by the count, right? So here, if count is greater than 0, then average is the total divided by the count, and you can print the average salary. Otherwise, if count was equal to 0, then this means that no data was entered. Right, let me ask you the following question before we try to run it and see how it works. Can you tell me when am I going to execute this statement? In which case, in which situation I am going to execute this statement? For which input value or values I am going?
If I am
As long
if I'm from the beginning, I enter a negative value.
If from the beginning you enter a negative value. If from the beginning you enter a negative value, then in this case, count will stay as 0. Count will stay as 0, and this will be printed. So if I try it and I put a negative value, as you can see, no data was entered. Okay. So now if I want to really run it, so enter a salary or a negative value to finish. So let's, for example, first enter 10,000, and then we can enter 11,000, and then maybe 12,000. Okay, and now I want to compute I'm done. Okay, so I just need to enter any negative number, -8. Okay, what do you think the average is going to be in this case?
11,000.
The average will be in this case 11,000, right? So the average salary is 11,000. So did we get the idea of the sentinel value? So the sentinel value is part of the data type of input values that you enter, but it is basically impossible to be one of them. It is basically impossible to be one of them. In fact, in just a few minutes, we are going actually to do a much better, or we are going to employ a much better sentinel value. Okay, and this is done, because of the emphasis of Python on simplicity. We will see that maybe in other languages like C, we cannot do it. تفضل.
Sorry, but I'm thinking you wasn't listening to me. Doctor, I didn't understand exactly the signature value.
You didn't understand what?
The sentinel value.
Yeah. The sentinel value, as I said, it's a value that cannot be one of the inputs. For example, in this example, we have employee salary. Okay? We have employee salary. Do you think that anybody's salary can be a negative number?
No.
No. So we can use any negative number. We can use any negative number as what we call a sentinel value. So what is that sentinel value? So basically, in the while loop, we keep reading salaries. Okay? As long as the value is positive, we basically keep reading. Now, if I want to finish, I'm done. I have read all the salaries. Now, what do? I enter this sentinel value. Now, this sentinel value can be any negative number, -1, -2, -8, -20,000, minus anything. So that's what a sentinel value is.
So it's like if condition.
It's like what?
If condition.
If condition. Well, the condition is in the while loop.
Yeah, I mean, it's like a bunch stop. If I do like this and you print, isn't it? Or it's just for the minus, negative?
It's not just for the minus. It's basically, first of all, a sentinel value is not a statement. So you said it's like an if statement, but
Yes.
it's not really an if statement. I think what you meant is, it's like a stopper.
Yes.
Once you read it, this means that please stop. طيب, how do I translate please stop? Well, it's actually in this condition. Okay. If this condition becomes false, which will become false if I enter a negative value, خلاص, I will not go inside.
Yes.
وضحت الآن؟
Yes. Thanks.
Doctor,
طيب, نعم.
can we set a sentinel value for alphabetical characters so that, like, for example, if we say if the character we entered is like less than C, if that's the case, we stop the program.
You can, but as I said, in just few minutes or even seconds, we will see even a better way of using sentinel value.
Okay.
Okay. Right. Okay, so let's take some common loop algorithms. Let's look at some common loop algorithms. The first one is basically to find the sum and average of a list of values, an array of values. And here actually we will find the other quote-unquote sentinel that will tell the program, stop reading. Okay, that will tell the program stop reading. Can anybody tell me, look at the code and tell me what is the sentinel value in this case?
As long as we enter something, the program will start. If we entered space, the program will stop.
Mrs. Space.
If just we pressed enter without anything,
You just press enter. You just press enter without anything. Basically, you enter nothing. You enter the empty string. Okay. Although when you press the enter, you have the \n, but the \n is actually consumed by the input function. The input function reads everything before the \n or the end of line. And since you only enter the end of line, what is before the end of line? Nothing. Okay. So this is even a much better sentinel value, the empty string. The empty string. Okay. Especially if your values are numbers, and you put an empty string, well, definitely an empty string cannot be a number. Definitely the empty string cannot be a number. So here, input string equal input enter value, and then while the input string is not equal to the empty string, okay, I compute the floating point value of the input string, and I store it in value. Hopefully it will be correct, okay? And then I will add that value to total. And then, again, I need to enter the input value for the next number, So again, if it is an empty string, I will just go outside and print the sum. If it's not the empty string, then I will continue reading as long as it is not the empty string. Okay. So for example, if I try to run this, so let's say I have 1.1, 2.2, 3.3, 4.4, 5.5, and then I'm gonna put the empty string. Okay. So here, there is nothing, right? And therefore, the empty string was read, so this condition became false. So I will come here and I will just add all these numbers, which is 16.5. Okay, you can check, you can add them up, and I hope that they will add up to 16.5. واضح يا شباب؟ Right. So if I want to do the average, what do I need to change in this code?
The count variable.
The count variable. So you start. So you need to initialize the count variable, somewhere here before total or after total to 0. صح؟ طيب. And then
add it in the while loop, in the body.
Add it in the body of the while loop, which is after you read the value, صح? Float input string. You can either put it before this statement or after this statement, صح ولا لا?
Yes.
Okay, so you will say count equal count plus 1. طيب, finally.
Then maybe you can make a new variable which is average and
print the average.
It equals total over count.
Exactly. Okay. So as you can see, you have already gotten it, right? You have already gotten it. The only thing here that is maybe was not mentioned is that there is no average if the count was 0. So that's why we need to check whether count is greater than 0 or not. Okay, whether count is greater than 0 or not. Okay, right? Okay, another type of loop algorithms is counting matches. So you want to count how many negative values are included in a sequence of integers. You are reading a sequence of integers, and you would like to find out, well, how many negative numbers are there in my sequence? Okay, now in order to do that, we need to keep what is called a counter, which is a variable that is initialized with 0 and incremented whenever there is a match. Whenever there is a match, right? Previously, when we did the counter in the previous example, when we had the count, it was actually related to the number of input values that you read, right? That's why anytime you enter the while loop, you will add count equal count plus 1. But here, I only need to add if there is a match. So now, what do you think? Inside the while loop, I'm going to have
an if statement.
An if statement. Inside the while loop, I am going to have an if statement, right? So again, we initialize the variable negative to 0 outside the loop. We enter a value, right? While input string is not equal to 0, then we say, value equal int, input string. If value is less than 0, then negative equal negative plus 1. So here, I only add the number of negatives when the value is less than 0. When the value is less than 0. And of course, I will continue, input equal input, enter value, and, I will re-execute the whole while loop as long as it is not an empty string, as long as it is not the empty string. And of course, finally, there were, that much negative value. There were that much negative value. So for example, if I run my code and let's say I enter 4 minus 4, 3, 1, 0, minus 0, 20, 33. Okay, now before I press enter, before I put the empty space, can anybody tell me how many negative numbers do we have?
1.
With negative 0?
It will be 0.
It will be 0, صح? And negative 0 will be 0. It's 0. It's not negative. Even if I put negative, but negative 0, صح? So that's why there were 1 negative value. There were 1 negative value. Right. Let me ask you the following question. Why didn't I put here? I read input, and then I convert the input into an integer. Why didn't I just convert the input into an integer in this line, in line 2? Who can tell me why?
Maybe a float
So that I can
variable
insert
character.
the empty.
Because I want to use the string as a sentinel value, the empty string as a sentinel value, right? We would like to use the empty string as a sentinel value. If I put the int here, my sentinel value would have to be an integer. And in this case, it doesn't make sense. Then I want to count the negative. So there is no integer that is, not part of the input. All integers are part of the input. All integers are part of the input. Okay, so that's why we keep this as such. We do not change it. We do not convert it to integer in the beginning. No, we do it after we check for the condition input string equal, not equal. Okay. واضح يا شباب? Any question about the while loop so far? Okay, very good. Right. So let's now move on to another form of loops, which is the for loop. Okay, which is the for loop. Now, why do we use for loop? Well, the for loop can be used to iterate over the contents of any container. Over the contents of any container. Now, as far as we are concerned, the only container that we know of, so far is the string. But later on, inshallah, we will see other containers like the dictionary, the list. Well, sets, we're going to skip sets. You can read about them on your own. But we will see, different types of containers, right? So a container is an object like a string that contains or stores a collection of elements. So it's not only a single element, it's a collection of elements. Okay. So the string is a container that stores a sequence of what? Well, a string is a container that stores a sequence of characters. Okay. It stores a sequence of characters. Right. So what does the for loop then do? Well, the for loop then will loop based on the contents of that string. Okay, and in fact, using the contents of that string as the loop variable. Let's look at that. Maybe my statement as a loop variable might not be 100% correct, but let's see what do we mean by that. Okay, so suppose we want to print a string with one character per line. I don't know, for some reason, we would like to print the string one character in each character is in a single line. Now, we cannot simply print the string using the print function. By the way, function is here written incorrectly. Okay. Okay. So we cannot just simply print the string using the print function, because the print function will print the string, if it does not contain \n or the end of line character, it will print it on the same line. It will print it on the same line. Instead, we need to iterate over the characters in the string and print each character individually. How can we do that? Well, the best thing is basically using a for loop. And it is actually very simple. Okay, it's as simple as saying for letter in and then the string. So how do I translate this, or how do I read this? I read this as if I'm saying for each letter in this. Okay, for each letter in this variable. So I will start with the first letter, which is capital V, and then I will get the second letter, which is I, and then I will get the R, the G, the I, the N, the I, the A. Okay, I will go over all of them one by one in that order. Okay, when I use this for loop.
So letter is defined in Python as long as there is any letter remaining. So I will continue.
You will continue, exactly. So for example, this variable here, how many times I'm going to execute the body of the for loop?
8 times.
For this variable, 8 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 times. Okay, 8 times. Right. So an important difference between the while loop and the for loop is the following. First of all, in the while loop, the index variable I is assigned 0, 1, 2, etc. The index variable. When you say while I is less than or equal to this or less than or equal to that, usually the index variable is assigned 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. But in the for loop, with a string container state name, the element variable is not assigned 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Is assigned, you know, state name 0, which means the first character in variable state name, or stored in variable state name. The second character in the value stored in state name 1, statement 2, etc. So what are the values of letter in this case? Well, every time there is a loop, or we will start with the value of letter being capital V, and then when we loop again, the value of letter becomes a small I. Then it becomes a small r. Then it becomes a small g, I, n, I, a, and so on and so forth. I made a, okay. So if I try to run this, look at what happens. Capital V, capital I, R, G, I, N, I, A, Virginia. So now the letter, this variable, has assumed the value of each character in the string. In this order, okay, in this order. Capital V, small I, small r, small g, small I, small n, small I, small a. Okay.
Is the letter exclusively for alpha, يعني alphabetical characters,
No.
or
No.
dots and dashes and numbers?
It can be anything. I can add, you know, dot, dash, pound. If you want single quote. طيب. So now if I try to run this, as you can see, it's running exactly the same way. So the value of letter is being assigned to every character in this string. To every character in this string.
دكتور
واضح؟ نعم.
دكتور letter it means يعني it's something variable ولا letter
It's
is
a variable. Yes. This is the index variable. This is the index variable that will be automatically assigned to, you know, the first letter in the string, and then the second letter in the string, and then the third letter in the string, and then the fourth letter in the string, and so on and so forth until you reach the last letter in the string. Okay.
What I mean that we can't change يعني the word letter.
Yeah, you can. For example, for next character in state name, print next character. Okay, print next character. If I run this, so now instead of the name of the variable called letter, now the name of the variable is called next character. So
how can the Python understand that I want to print the letters and each letter in one line? And
well, because next character, the first value of next character is capital V. So when you say print capital V, it will print capital V and it will go to the next line.
I mean, what's the next character for Python? I didn't define it.
It's being defined in each iteration. Each iteration, next character has a different value. Where does it get those values from? From the variable state name.
لما نستعمل for عادي خلاص يصير it means that we can use it. We can use any.
Yeah. So this is basically a variable which will assume the value of each character in the string, starting from the first to the last.
Okay, now it's clear.
Starting from the first to the
any changing, it will be the same, right?
ايش قصدك؟
If I write a new word that it says word, the system will understand that they want.
Exactly. So now, what will be the first value of next character when I'm running the while loop, the for loop?
W.
And then the next one will be small o, صح? And then the next one will be small r, and then the next one will be small d. So that's why you print first the capital W, and then in the second time you print the O, you print the R, you print the D.
And Doctor, even if I change the next character, I change it by any name?
Yeah. Next character is just a variable. But it has to be the same name as this one, because this one is, the assignment is happening here. The assignment for each value is happening there. So this means that if I want to, print it or do anything about it, you can do it actually right there inside the body of the while loop. Okay.
Doctor, sorry, another question. Can I enter the for loop inside another loop?
Of course, this is called nested loops, and we will talk about it. Don't worry.
Okay.
Okay. Just like we had, an if inside an if, we can also have a for inside. We can also have a for inside a for. طيب. Go to the chat and tell me, what do you think will be printed if I do this? يلا يا شباب. Go to the chat and tell me, what do you think will be printed? Okay. Word, error not found. Abdul Majid, did you do any programming in any other language?
No, this is my first programming.
This is your first programming experience. Okay. طيب. So Muhammad, he said D. D will be printed again. Abdulaziz said, the whole word will be printed. Ahmad mentioned next character. So why next character? Right. So let's come here. See, the first time I read I execute the for loop, I will assign it to the W, the O, the R, D. D is the last time that I assigned that variable, right? Now, when I go outside the for loop, the value of next character will keep the last value that was assigned to it, which is basically the D, and that's why this is what will be printed. Okay, and that's why this is what will be printed. Now we will notice that this is happening for the in this case. So for example, after the D, it's not like an error happens because we went outside the for loop. No. Okay. We will see later on when we talk about the C language that in the C language it is actually different. Okay, in the C language it is actually different. But let's wait until we talk about it when we go to C. Okay. Right. So
Doctor,
now.
Last class we talked about the wait function. Do you want to add it here, or we discuss that later?
The wait function?
Yes.
What do you mean? Which
delay
wait?
the execution of the codes in the Python.
Oh, I didn't look for it. Wallah, I'm sorry.
No, I found it.
Oh, you found it? You found
Yeah,
it? Okay. So what is the function called?
You should import the first import time.
Okay.
And then just inside anywhere you want, just put time dot sleep and then the number of seconds.
Okay, very good. Very good. So this will then show you exactly, I mean, especially if you would like to see, each statement when it is being executed, you can, put these time.sleep statements between them, and you will see the execution, kind of in slow motion. Huh?
Yes.
Very good. Very good. Thank you. Thank you. Right. So basically, the loop body is executed for each character in the string state name, starting with the first character. At the beginning of each loop iteration, the next character is assigned to the variable letter. Then the loop body is basically executed. So this is basically the syntax of the for statement. So for variable in container and then colon. So this is basically the header. And below is the block of statements, which is the body. Okay, block of statements, which is which is the body. So letter is the index variable, state name is the container, and the variable here contains an element, not an index, right? It's not like 0, 1, 2. It's state name 0, state name 1, state name 2, state name 3, and so on and so forth, right? And of course, these are the statements that are executed for each element in the container in the whole block. Yes.
In the previous example, the next character after finishing the loop will take the last
Yes.
word as
yes, because this is the last assignment.
Okay, now it's clear for me.
Okay, this is the last assignment. Right. Okay. Can we write up this program using a while loop? You know that we can access, you know, the V, the I, using
the index.
basically, yeah, using the index. So you write, you know, state name. Pardon my beautiful handwriting. Name, and then, you know, if you put 0, that will be the capital V. If you put 1, that will be the small I. If you put 2, that will be the small r. Okay. So can you please, you know, write this code using the while loop?
Again, Doctor, could you please repeat the question?
Write this code, but not using the for loop. Use the while loop.
Okay.
Use the while loop. And I will take the first one who will put his answer.
Doctor, I don't know if we're gonna use length or no. I'm confused a little bit.
If you are going to use what?
Length or something.
Length?
Yeah.
Of course, you have to use the length. How do you know you're gonna? When are you going to stop? Huh?
Okay.
It isn't complete. I entered it by mistake. Sorry.
Okay. Fine. You're making it too hard, yeah, Muhammad. You can assume it is the same word, Virginia.
Oh, okay. I thought that you wanted general.
Well, you're right. If you want to use the length, then you have to enter the string. Huh? Well, maybe you're right. You're right. Do you all see what Muhammad wrote, ya shabab? In fact, we can work on this. So length equal len, input, enter the word. So you put them all in one step. You know, you enter the string, and then while index is less than or equal to length. Now, of course, you did not define the index yet, صح? So you should start by defining the index, and there you go. So so you said index equals 0, right? Index equals 0, and then while index is less than or equal to the length, what do? You print, state name index equal index plus 1. If we look here, I think maybe we already answered it. This is something similar to it, right? I equals 0, state name equal Virginia. Instead of storing it in a variable called length, I just immediately said while I is less than the length of statement name, I put letter equal statement name, I print letter, and then I equal I plus 1. Look at 3 lines of let's concentrate on the while loop. The while loop, 2 lines of code. We needed how many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines of code to replace 2 lines of code. 5 lines of code to replace 2 lines of code. So you can actually, whatever you do in the for loop, you can do it in the while loop. The only problem is it's going to be longer. The while loop, the for loop is actually a much neater way of doing the iteration over the element of the container. Okay, that's the advantage of using the for loop. The for loop is easier to read, right? Rather than defining indexes and going over these indexes and length. You don't worry about length. Look here. Did you worry about the length of the variable state name? خلاص, it's been taken care of by the for loop. It has been taken care of by the for loop. Okay, fine. Now, the for loop can also be used with the range function to iterate over a range of integer values. When we write range ij, what are the range values? Of course, assuming that I is less than j. What are the range values when we write range ij? Well, when we write range ij, the input, the range values are I plus 1, I plus 2, all the way until I reach j minus 1, not j. Okay, j minus 1, not j. So when I say for I in range 1 to 10, print I, it will be printing 1, 2, 3, 4. The last thing that will be printed is
9.
The last thing that will be printed is basically 9.
What about 1? Will it be printed?
ايش رايك? So this is inclusive, this is exclusive. So it includes the I, but it excludes the J. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. نعم.
المفترض يبدأ من 2.
ليش المفروض يبدأ من الاثنين؟ This is not an open interval.
الشباب ملخبطين مع الماث.
لا, this is not an open interval. هي it's kind of يعني what you call it is kind of confusing. That's why you really need to because this is, by the way, sort of very nice questions, يعني, okay, in the exam. So when you say ij, this means I plus 1, I plus 2, all the way until j minus 1. J is not included, so it's half open. Huh? It's closed from the I, it's open from the j. It's closed from the I, it's open from.
So if we swap between 10 and 1, it should be printing 10 till 2.
It will not. It will go into an infinite loop, because by default the range function assumes that it increases 1 by 1.
So we should start from the minimum and end with the maximum?
Exactly, by default. If you want to do some other thing, we will see how we'll do it in just a second.
Doctor,
Okay.
There is no range that include J?
Not that I know of.
Okay. So it's always
it's always excluded. It's always excluded.
Okay.
Okay. So what is the while loop that corresponds to this for loop? Well, this is the while loop that corresponds to this for loop. And as you can see here, 2 lines of code were replaced by 4 lines of code. 2 lines of code were replaced by 4 lines of code. So you can use a for loop as a count-controlled loop to iterate over a range of integer values using the range function, right? we use the range function for generating a sequence of integers that are less than the argument that can be used with the for loop. Less than the argument that can be used with the for loop. So this is basically the syntax, and this is the last thing that we will do today. Inshallah, we will continue next week. So for variable in range and then statement. Now, we have three forms of the range. The first form is if you say range and only one argument. In that case, it will print from 0 up to 4. When you say range 5, it will always start from 0, okay, and will end at n minus 1 if it was range n. If it was range n. So this is with one argument. With two arguments, it will start with the first argument and it will finish before the last argument. So this will print for I in range 1, 5, print I will print, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 in each line. Finally, with three arguments, the third argument determines the increment slash decrement. The increment slash decrement. So the first one is like the first one, 1. 11 is excluded, and then 2 is basically the increment. So I will first print 1, but then I will print what? I will print 1 plus 2, which is 3. 3 plus 2, 5. 5 plus 2, 7. Until now, we are less than 11. 7 plus 2, 9. Less than 11. 9 plus 2, 11 is equal to 11, will not be printed. I will keep printing as long as the value is less than the second argument. Okay? So we will leave the activities. Inshallah, we will do them bi'idhnillah. We will do them bi'idhnillah early next week, inshallah. Any question before we finish this up?
Yes. Dr. lecture.
By the way, whoever wants to leave can leave now. We're already a little bit beyond the 9:50. So if you want to leave, you can leave if you're in a hurry. تفضل يا فيصل.
lecture الأسبوع عادي ما انرفعت لسه.
معلش اعذروني تورطت بكم شغله بس ان شاء الله I will do that as soon as possible ان شاء الله tonight باذن الله.
لا خذ راحتك يعطيك العافيه.
الله يعافيك. اي شيء ثاني يا شباب؟ Anything else?
Doctor, yes, regarding the homework.
Yes.
For the Zakah exercise, the last column, he said same pattern as the last two rows.
Yes.
Does he want from me that I continue until the 600, or
no? You continue until whatever Python can take as an integer.
But this will go to infinity.
Well, we will not reach infinity.
Because when I say this, when I see the sample run, I said that he maybe wants just to do the last one.
No. Maybe we should change the sample run to have maybe 1,000 feet, so that you can relate that this is not stopping at 600.
But you said in the same exercise, loops are not allowed.
Yes, you can answer it without loops.
So my end point where? Because I don't know where is my end point.
There is no end point. Okay. Number 2, there is no end point. Number 1, you can do it without a for loop. Number 0, think about it, and tomorrow, inshallah, I have an office hour from 9 to 10. You can always come and ask me during the office hour. Okay?
Okay, my last question, sorry. Can I use else or elif in Zakah exercise?
Of course.
Okay, thank you, Doctor.
هيا يلا يا شباب نراكم على خير إن شاء الله. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك، أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت، أستغفرك وأتوب إليك.